Part 1. The miracle element, the ghostly glow, and the jaw that imagine landing the perfect job. It's 1917. You're a young woman, maybe 18 years old. The pay is amazing, 3 times what your father makes. The work is artistic, and there is a magical perk. The paint you work with, it glows in the dark. It's called radium, the miracle element. Doctors say it cures cancer. People drink it in water to stay young. It's expensive, rare, and safe. So, you and your friends have fun with it. You paint your nails with it. You sprinkle it in your hair to look like a shining ghost at parties. You even put the paintbrush in your mouth to sharpen the tip. But you don't know the truth. You don't know that the miracle is actually a monster. You don't know that this element is slowly eating your bones from the inside out. This is the terrifying true story of the Radium Girls, the women who were poisoned by their bosses, ignored by doctors, and who had to fight for justice while their bodies were literally falling apart. Warning, this story gets pretty graphic. If you're ready for the dark truth, hit that like button and subscribe for more forgotten history. Let's turn off the lights and see the glow. Chapter 1. The Miracle Element. To understand this tragedy, you have to understand radium. Discovered by Marie Curie, radium was the most expensive substance on Earth in the early 1900s. It was the new magic. Newspapers claimed it could restore hair, cure blindness, and give you energy. Companies put radium in everything: toothpaste, chocolate, water, even lipstick. But the U.S. military needed it for something else: watches. Soldiers in World War I needed to see the time in the dark trenches. So a company called the United States Radium Corporation in New Jersey created a special glow-in-the-dark paint called Undark. They hired hundreds of young girls to paint the tiny numbers on the watch dials. It was delicate work. Chapter 2. Lip, Dip, Paint. The girls sat in rows in a dusty studio. It was a fun atmosphere. They laughed, ate lunch at their desks, and chatted. But the watch dials were tiny. To get the numbers right, the brush tip had to be extremely sharp. The supervisors taught the girls a specific technique: lip, dip, paint. Put the brush in your mouth to sharpen the point with your lips, lip. Dip it in the radium paint, dip. Paint the number, paint. The paint had no taste. It was slightly gritty. The girls asked the managers, "Is this stuff safe?" The managers, who wore lead aprons in the laboratory to protect themselves, smiled and said, "Absolutely. It will make your cheeks rosy." The managers lied. They knew radium was dangerous in large amounts, but they didn't care. The girls loved the glow. When they walked home at night, their clothes would sparkle. They would paint their teeth with it to surprise their boyfriends with a glowing smile. They were known as the Ghost Girls. Chapter 3. The First Crack. Molly Maggia was one of the best painters. She was young, vibrant, and social. In 1922, Molly went to the dentist. She had a toothache. The dentist pulled the tooth, but the wound didn't heal. It started to bleed and rot. Then the tooth next to it started to hurt. The dentist pulled that one too. Then the next one. Soon Molly's mouth was full of painful, pus-filled ulcers. Her breath smelled like death. She couldn't eat. The pain was excruciating, shooting into her jaw and ears. Her dentist was baffled. He gently touched her jawbone to examine an abscess. To his horror, The jawbone broke under his finger. It didn't just break, it crumbled like dry chalk. He reached into her mouth and actually lifted her entire lower jawbone out. It had separated from her skull. Molly wasn't just losing teeth. Her bones were disintegrating. Chapter 4: The Phantom Killer. Molly Maggia died in September 1922. She was only 24. Her death certificate said she died of syphilis. This was a lie. The company doctors blamed syphilis to shame her and protect the company. Syphilis was a dirty disease, and it meant no one would investigate her death any further. But then, other girls started getting sick. Grace Fryer had trouble walking. Her spine was crushing itself. Hazel Vincent's jaw swelled up to the size of a grapefruit. Albina Larice gave birth to a stillborn baby. The ghost girls were terrified. They were all suffering from the same mysterious symptoms: rotting bones, extreme anemia, and large tumors. And the scariest part, even after they bathed, their skin still glowed in the dark. The poison was inside them. Chapter 5: The Discovery. By 1924, dozens of girls were sick or dead. The U.S. Radium Corporation denied everything. They said, "It's not our paint. These girls have poor hygiene." But a man named Dr. Harrison Matland, a brilliant medical examiner, decided to do something radical. He exhumed, or dug up, the body of Molly Maggia, who had been dead for 5 years. He opened the coffin. Molly's body was decomposed, but when they cleaned off her bones and took them into a dark room, they glowed. Her bones were radioactive. Dr. Matlin realized the horror. The girls hadn't just eaten paint. The body had mistaken radium for calcium. The body had absorbed the radium and built it directly into the girls' bones. They were walking nuclear reactors, and there was no cure. Chapter 6: David versus Goliath. You would think the company would apologize. They didn't. They hired private investigators to follow the sick girls and dig up dirt on their personal lives. They bribed doctors to lie about the x-rays. Grace Fryer, who could barely walk and had lost most of her teeth, decided to sue. But no lawyer wanted to take the case. The U.S. Radium Corporation was too powerful, too rich. Also, in the 1920s, women suing a corporation was unheard of. Finally, a young lawyer named Raymond Berry agreed to help them. But time was running out. The girls were dying. The company's strategy was simple: delay the trial until they are all dead. The judge postponed the trial for months. The girls were bedridden. It looked like the company was going to get away with murder.
Chapter 7: The Legion of the Living Dead. The year was 1928. The case of the Radium Girls had finally hit the newspapers, and the headline was sensational: The Legion of the Living Dead. The entire country was captivated. These weren't old soldiers. They were young, beautiful women in their 20s who were literally disintegrating while they were still alive. The trial began in January 1928. It was a spectacle. Grace Fryer and Quinta McDonald were too weak to walk. They had to be carried into the courtroom. They couldn't even raise their right hands to take the oath because their shoulders were shattered. The United States Radium Corporation tried every dirty trick in the book. They claimed the girls were lying. They claimed the statute of limitations had expired, meaning they waited too long to sue. They tried to delay the hearings, hoping the girls would die before a verdict could be reached. but the physical evidence was undeniable. One of the girls pulled a piece of her own jawbone out of her mouth right there in the courtroom. Chapter 8. The Settlement. The judge, seeing the girls were on death's door, grew impatient with the company's delays. The media pressure was immense. Even Marie Curie, the discoverer of radium, heard about the case in France and was horrified, though she stated there is no cure. Realizing they were losing the public relations war, the company agreed to settle. It wasn't a huge amount of money. Each girl received $10,000, about $150,000 today, a $600 annual pension, and the company agreed to pay for all their medical and legal bills. It wasn't justice, but it was a victory. They had proven that the company was responsible. Sadly, the money didn't matter much. Within a few years of the settlement, almost all of the original Radium Girls were dead. They were buried in lead-lined coffins because their bodies were still radioactive. If you hold a Geiger counter over their graves in New Jersey, it will click. Chapter 11. It happened again. The Ottawa tragedy. You would think the industry would learn. They didn't. While the New Jersey case was famous, another company in Ottawa, Illinois, called Radium Dial, was doing the exact same thing. They told their workers, "Don't worry about the New Jersey girls. The stuff we use is safe." They lied. In the 1930s, the Illinois girls started dying too. Catherine Donahue was fired for limping. Her hip bones were crushing. When she sued, the company dragged it out until 1938. Catherine gave her testimony from her deathbed in her living room. She collapsed shortly after and died weighing less than 70 pounds. But her testimony won the case.